Welcome to episode 13 of Talking Prisoner. Today we have an amazing, talented guest with us, joining Ken and I. This guest is a graduate of NIDA, the National Institute of Dramatic Art. She learned to paint under Judy Cassab. Her storyline on Prisoner caused some controversy. She appeared in 13 episodes of Prisoner and also appeared on Sons and Daughters. She is an award-winning artist. She played Lainie Dobson. Welcome to Talking Prisoner, Marina Finlay, and good afternoon, Ken.
Hello there.
Hello.
Got it all out. How are things in Sydney at the moment?
Really nice, because I think the rain is going to come, and I love the rain. And we need the rain. So today's beautiful. Yesterday was way too hot. You know, summer was like a bit early, and with all this global warming stuff, you know, when that sun gets a bite, you get a bit. So today's nice and cool, and I think we may have a bit of a shower.
Okay.
We've got lots of prisoner questions, of course, but before we start, we'd like to learn a little about your life before Prisoner. And can you tell us about your childhood and what that was like?
Yeah, I can. Well, up until I was 11, I had a beautiful childhood. I had wonderful parents, both immigrants from Hungary. My father came in 1949 and my mother came in 1956 after the uprising. So both fled quite a lot of horror, arrived here. I was born in 1961, and they just thought they arrived in paradise after what they had experienced. The Germans, the communists, the Russians, you know, it was a bit of a nightmare. So they just hit the ground running, and had my sister and I. My sister's 2 years older than I, and everything was just beautiful, really. A lot of love. My father was a beautiful man, but sadly, he died suddenly when I was 11 and my sister was 13. He drove us to school in the morning and we got home in the afternoon, and my mother opened the door, which was unusual. My mother had already opened a fashion boutique in Double Bay in 1966. So it was unusual that my mother was at home. So when we saw that she opened the door, we were already like, what are you doing at home? And she opened the door and she said, I have something to tell you. Daddy died. So it was like the only way I can really describe it is like an earthquake. You know, it was devastating. And then I think it changed the course of my life. A shock like that to a beautiful man like that. Maybe if I didn't love him and adore him so much, it might have been better. Or maybe if there would have been some warning, if your father gets ill and you visit them in hospital. But there was such innocence, and it was just like poof. So I think that began a journey into the arts, really. I wonder what my course would have been if my father would have stayed alive. But something like that, you experience a kind of shattering that connects you emotionally, that otherwise you might have just had more of a natural progression in your growing years. So that changed my course.
Wow. And you mentioned your mum had a fashion boutique.
Yeah, my mum opened a boutique in 1966, so 10 years after she arrived in Australia. And she had been an actress and a dancer in Hungary. And while she was there, the communist regime, she would sneak Vogue magazines and look at them and dream about another life, the life of the West, the decadent West, where there's beauty. And so when after 10 years of being here, I was 5, 1966. She and my father was all for it. He was ahead of his time. My mum said, I want to go and work. one thing led to another. She opened a boutique in an area which at the time is not what it is now. Double Bay in Sydney in 1966 was not what it is now. Now it is a fashion centre. Back then it was kind of empty, apart from a deli and a coffee shop, but it wasn't what it is. And yeah, Mum became a successful boutique designer, fashion designer, and wholesaler. She would travel to Europe twice a year buying fashion.
Wow. Just going back to your dad for a moment, which I'm really sorry to hear about that, but you have an interesting story about his your surname.
Oh, yes. So my dad arrived here in 1949 after the war, where he lost his family in Auschwitz. So he came here as an orphan, and he arrived, and his name was Peter Fosakosh. And of course, when he would speak to people, nobody understood what he meant when he said Fosakosh, let alone spell it, you know. And he got sick of all that. So he basically opened the phone book here and went into F and went down the names of F, and his finger stayed on Finlay. And he changed his name to Finlay so that he didn't have to spell Fosakosh all the time.
How did things work out for you in school?
Oh, lovely. I enjoyed school. I was particularly fond of sport. I was a swimmer, particularly. I trained, and then again, everything changed when my dad died. But my dad would drive me to swimming, and I was obsessed with swimming and athletics. So I was very physical, and I had a good time at school. I enjoyed school, not the school class, not the classroom. I just daydreamed in the classroom. But once I got on to, and also I enjoyed drama. So it was all physical, instinctual, but not heady. I was never particularly academic.
Was dancing in there?
Not at school, but at home. I danced a lot at home. I loved musicals, and I danced and sang, and I think that was my NIDA training before I went to NIDA. I was obsessed with, oh, Jesus Christ Superstar, Chorus Line, Chicago, Shirley MacLaine's one-woman show, Liza Minnelli's one-woman show. And I just danced and sang my heart out. So it sort of primed me for the stage, really.
Wow. Now, we know that you're an award-winning artist and have done some amazing work, but as a young child, did you draw and paint when you were young?
No, I didn't. No, not at all. And I never had aspirations to be a painter. I always had aspirations to be an actor. I was very young when I knew I wanted to be an actress, like 6, 7, 8, somewhere around there. No, probably more like 8, 9. I know my dad was still alive. I'd done a school play, and I played a witch. And I think all the parents were in the audience. And I remember just really digging it, you know. I felt terrific up there. And I think from then on, I just thought, this is what I want to do.
And did your parents support that? Because I know some parents are against, you know, acting.
Yeah. Well, I don't know if my father would have, because he died when it all, you know. Yeah, I don't think I went to my dad and told him then that I wanted, but I do remember that experience at a very early age on stage, but I don't know if I ever expressed it as such. But my mother was very supportive because she had been an actress and a dancer in Hungary. So she came from that. So probably didn't surprise her in many ways. Yeah, she encouraged it.
Oh, that's good.
Mm-hmm.
We have a question from one of the fans, which brings us to NIDA. Janice Robertson asks, was there anyone at NIDA when you were there in 1981, when you graduated, that we would know now?
Yes, everybody knows Hugo Weaving.
Oh, wow.
He was in my year. We had 3 years together at NIDA. Hugo Weaving is the biggest star. I also went through with a wonderful, wonderful actor called Keith Robinson, who does a lot of theatre here and is working now. But he had an illness that struck him about 14 years ago, and he's been in a wheelchair for 14 years. And for many years, he thought he would never be able to act again, but he's come back into it and has done a couple of Belvoir Street performances in the wheelchair. And so he was with me at NIDA. And I don't know if you know Paul Blackwell, wonderful actor. Again, mainly he was stage, but he did some film as well. Yeah, so those three boys would be the best known for the public.
And did you enjoy being at NIDA and going through that process?
Yeah, I loved NIDA. I was very young. I went to NIDA when I was 17. So in retrospect, but then I wouldn't have been in Hugo and Keith's year, who I'm still in touch with. So I sometimes think, gee, in retrospect, I wish they would have told me to go away for a couple of years and come back at 20 when I'd lived a little bit, but I hadn't lived at all. I went straight from school to NIDA and I was very young, but I really enjoyed NIDA very much. But had I have lived a little bit, my capacity to understand being an actor in the world might have held more maturity, and I didn't have that maturity as a working actress.
Because NIDA is quite hard to get into, isn't it?
Yeah, I was lucky.
Yeah, we've learned.
Yeah, it is hard. Yeah, tough to get into.
Yeah.
But I worked hard to get in there, you know. I worked very hard on my monologues and I wanted it so badly. I really wanted it. There was, you know, when you're young, you don't think to yourself, I should wait 2 years. No, I didn't think that, you know. But everything in retrospect.
Yeah.
But yeah, I desperately wanted to go to NIDA, and the door opened.
So I'm jumping ahead a little bit here, but Matt was going to ask you about, did you know that you wanted to act? But I think you basically already told us that. So what was NIDA, I suppose, was that one of your favourite childhood memories or?
Definitely. Oh, definitely. I mean, you know, when I say it was wonderful, it was hard, but it was like being in a training camp, you know, and I was up for it. I was devoted. And when I was there, a lot of people got kicked out. I think we started with 28. And by the time we graduated, there were only 13 of us, 10 men and 3 women. And so in first and second year at NIDA, we were watching people get culled out. So I was just, I never was late for class. I don't even think I ever had a sick day. You know, I paid enormous attention because I just desperately didn't want them to kick me out.
And what would be a reason they would kick you out? Like, what was for being late or not?
I can't say. I don't know. I don't know. I think there'd be many a reason. Mucking up, there's a good reason. Too much mucking up. Skipping too many classes, arriving to class late. Maybe also not showing the dedication that is required to get a good performance. You really need to focus and need it and want it and exercise your imagination to its greatest capacity in order to embody that particular role. And if you're scattered with that, and of course, it's natural that one would be when one is young, because hormones for one, you're going to lose focus. I didn't lose focus at NIDA. I lost focus after NIDA.
Yeah. Wow. Just jumping off acting for a minute. Do you like to cook at all?
Yeah, I do. I do like to cook. Do you like to cook?
Sometimes, not a lot.
Yeah, no, I do like to cook. I only learned about cooking very late. I only learned about cooking at about 35. And yeah, it's not rocket science. Who knew? I thought it was like, really, that's for other people. I'll just like live on takeaway. But you know, it's quite lovely to prepare your own meals because you can prepare what you want to eat.
What's one of your things you like to cook?
I'll tell you what my standard dish is: a stir fry. Quick, beautiful fresh vegetables, either with rice or Asian noodles. I particularly like Asian food. I don't make it as well as, you know, but I love Chinese food, but I don't make Chinese food. But I do variation stir fry.
Yeah. Oh, nice. Nice.
Healthy.
Yeah. You don't do a traditional Hungarian
Sadly not. I wish I'm sure my mother would wish I could, but no, it's a bit, I loved Hungarian food as a child, but it's very rich.
It is rich, but it's beautiful food.
It's beautiful food.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in winter, there's nothing better than a goulash soup.
Making me hungry now.
You're now an artist, and you were mentored by Judy Cassab, who sadly passed away in 2015. She was the first woman in Australia to twice win the prestigious Archibald Award, and her work is represented in over 60 galleries worldwide. Can you tell us about Judy and what it was like to be a model and mentored by her?
Yeah. Well, I started to model for Judy. I was already an actor at the time. I was in my early 30s, maybe, early 20s, 22, 23. And she asked me, I bumped into her in the street. Judy, my mother had been Judy's model 10 years earlier, no more, 20 years earlier, before I'd been born. My mother had modeled a bit for Judy. So she knew my family and we knew each other vaguely, but I didn't know her very well. And I was a very young girl and she wanted the figure, you know, the nude. And she asked me if I'd come and model for her. And I remembered being very touched by being asked by her. And it was an immediate yes. But little did I know that I would continue to model for her for the next 30 years. Wow. I didn't know that at the time. It became a wonderful friendship. And again, I took that very seriously. I was never late for Judy. I honored her devotion to her art form. And we got very close and she became my friend and my mentor. I would sit and model and chat and she was just lovely. And I enjoyed modeling. I needed to model, you need to be able to sit still. And at that time, I think I'd been running too fast by that time. And I just used to take a pose and exhale. It was like, oh, heaven. The equivalent of that would be if someone had told me about meditation, which I didn't know about. But I would go into a meditation as I held my poses for Judy. And it was very healing for me at that time.
Wow. Judy was born in Vienna in 1920. Vienna must have been a wonderful place at that time.
Yes. Well, she wrote a book. There's a book of her diaries, which if you're interested, it's a beautiful read and you get to know about Europe and her arrival to Australia and then the Australian art world here up until I think the book was published in the early 90s. So it's a chronicle of that time in the art world. a diary. It's beautiful. It's a great book.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Sounds good.
I think the fans want to hear more about your career as an artist now. Can you tell us?
Yes. Well, you know, I often find the word career and artist to be a slightly oxymoronic, you know. Being an artist and putting it in next to the word career, they don't sit well together. Being a devoted artist, that sits well together. The career aspect comes and goes, as in it's there when you're having an exhibition. But when I sit here and I work on a portrait or a still life or a landscape, I don't think in terms of career. It's just each picture is a concentration and a poem, a visual poem in and of itself. So it has nothing really to do with the outside world as I make the work. As I make the work, I have to go into that zone of, so many words come to mind, prayer, dream, all of that. But it's not to do with the reaction of an audience.
When you begin a work, and I'm speaking from some experience, there's always the can I get this? Can I get this? You know, how can I capture it? And it's a bit like the blank page in a typewriter when you're sitting down to write a novel, where you've got to force yourself.
Yes,
Make yourself do it.
I love one of my favorite quotes is from Matisse, and he says, "Don't wait for inspiration. Inspiration comes while you're working." Do you know that quote? It's a great quote to remember when we sit at the blank canvas and go, "Oh my God," you know, because it can be daunting. It can be very daunting. You just got to go and keep going and go on that prickly journey. I think John Olsen described it as being like taking a walk in a bush and getting pricked by thorns. And I think he also said, or someone said, it's also like sitting in a boat with no paddle. So you get tossed about, and hopefully you'll come to shore.
I really like that phrase, prickly journey.
Yeah.
It's a prickly journey, yeah.
I like that.
And occasionally you come across some flowers.
I want to get into 1976 when you appeared on The Young Doctors, but
did I appear on The Young Doctors in 1976?
Yeah. I just want to hear about the Paris story, because that's a really fascinating story.
Okay. Well, when I was about 29, I bought a one-way ticket to Paris because I was a Francophile and I wanted to get away from Australia for a while. And I had kind of, within all of that, I had dreams of maybe working in French films because I adored French films. I was mad about them. And so I went there and I did see an agent and I showed them my show reel and they were very nice. They were, you know, complimentary and just keep in touch and you are a good actress and we will see more of you, Marina. And I went away and I never went back. I think at the time I was going on an inward journey, and to kind of push a career, push a fantasy of maybe working in French films, you need a hell of a lot of outward activity. And I didn't have it in me. I just didn't have it in me. But I got myself, or rather my sister actually, she gave me some money and she said, go and get yourself some drawing equipment and draw. Because I'd drawn a little bit on and off, but I never had aspirations to be a painter as such. But I think she could tell I was a bit lost. I didn't know which way to go. So then I started to draw. The long and short of it is I came back from Paris with about 30 drawings, small drawings, about this big, on paper, ink and colouring in pencils. Very naive, very pure. And I spent a lot of time doing them. They became my activity and inward gaze. And I came back, and as I said, I was already modelling for Judy. I showed Judy the drawings, and she said, you know, these are very good. I think you should have an exhibition. So she took me to her gallery, which was the Holdsworth Gallery in Sydney and Paddington. And she asked me to show, the woman who ran the gallery was Gisela Scheinberg. She said, show Gisela your pictures. And Gisela just looked through them, and she said, she looked up and she said, I will give you a show. And then she looked in her diary and she said, you go and get all of these framed, have them back to me in 6 weeks' time, and you will have a show in 2 months' time. So it went boom, 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 boom. And then the opening was glorious and people liked the work very much. And suddenly I sort of woke up the next day thinking I was an artist. It was destiny pushed me in another direction, and I went with it because I was a little lost. And, you know, as an actor, if you're lost, you do find other art forms. And but what happened to me by finding this art form, I ended up marrying it. And I never really, a couple of times I flirted with going back into acting, but I don't know how to be polygamous with my art. I don't know how you do that. You know, I would love to, but it's almost like painting and acting are rather demanding. They're very demanding on the being. And to change hats, I would love to quickly don different hats. But as yet, but we'll never say never, I just stay monogamous to my art form.
Wow.
Tell us about your dog.
My dog. Well, that's part of the reason I didn't last in Paris. I had been given a dog by a friend, maybe 6 months or a year before I left, an RSPCA mutt, most gorgeous dog, Herbert, who ended up living for 17 and a half years.
Wow.
And while I was in Paris, thinking I'd spend quite a lot of time there, 4 or 5 years, really do the French thing, you know. After about 3 months, I missed him desperately. And I came home. I came home to be with Herbert. It sounds ridiculous, but you know,
No,
that's love for you. You understand. Yes. You've got a dog? Have you got a dog? Yeah.
Yeah. He's probably just on the bed behind this screen, actually.
Oh, how lovely. How lovely.
The food must have been amazing in Paris, though.
Well, it's not.
The food, yeah. Too good. Too good. I think I put on a lot of weight. They're croissants. They're croissants. But I'll show you Herbert. You see that painting there, that one?
Yeah.
Oh, you can't really see. It's a drawing. It's a drawing. It's a a wash, like a Chinese wash of Herbert. So I did lots of, he was my muse, you know.
Wow.
He was my muse and model and guru, all in one.
And they are the best dogs when you get a pre-loved dog or not necessarily a pre-loved dog. We always go to the pound and the RSPCA and so forth. And
yeah, but Herbert was only 12 weeks old when I found him. It was my lucky day. He'd been surrendered. Very unusual to find this glorious, beautiful puppy. But yes, a rescue dog's the way to go.
Fantastic. Let's head over to 1983, Ken.
Oh, well, now in 1983, we were well and truly into Prisoner, and Marina, you appeared in 13 episodes, according to what I'm reading here. How did you get the part in Prisoner?
Well, I came out of NIDA in 1981, and when I came out, what was the first? I thought I did Flying Doctors when not Flying Doctors, Young Doctors. I thought I did Young Doctors when I came out, but I think I might have done that as well. And then I did a show called Taurus Rising in 1982. And that was a big Channel 9 gig, kind of like Dallas Dynasty, where Australia tried to do that. And I played the young daughter in that show. And I think that was a Grundy production. So it was a Grundy production. And all I remember is that, who was the casting agent for Prisoner? Bunny? Anyway, I did not audition. I was asked to, I was flown down to Melbourne to play the role. I didn't audition. So that's my memory. Bunny Brooks. Bunny Brooks.
Bunny Brooks.
It takes a while for the Bunny Brooks. She was the casting person for Prisoner, and she cast me from having seen me in other things.
Wow.
So I probably already auditioned by being a working actor.
I first worked with Bunny Brooks in the 1960s. She was the property mistress on a variety show called Sunny Side Up, and she brooked no insolence, and what she said went, very much so. And she's very regimented, but she was a great lady. I'd have a lot of time for Bunny.
Yes, I think I only met her once or twice. She was formidable in my memory.
Well, that was my next question was, did you audition and what did you remember about the audition? So that's amazing. No audition.
No audition. I only remember my agent ringing me, would you like to do this? And then they put me up, they flew me down and put me up in a hotel, and yeah, I did not audition.
Did you know anything about Prisoner? Had you watched any of it or? No,
not much. No, I hadn't watched much at all. I didn't know much, no, because while I was at NIDA, I didn't watch much TV. You know, I was devoted to the old theatre texts, Chekhov, Shakespeare. I didn't have time to watch TV. And then when I got out, I didn't have time to watch TV because I worked. As soon as I got out, it was bang, 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 which is why when I went and sat for Judy, I was exhausted, I think. I was exhausted. It all sort of happened fast.
Yeah. Yes, it's a bit like me working in television. I never watched TV much either.
Yeah, well, if you're working like that, you don't have time. These days I watch a lot. I'm mad about Netflix. I love it. So how things change. I didn't watch it then and I watch it now.
What's one of your favorite shows on Netflix? What are you watching?
You know what I really enjoyed with our Australian actor Ben Mendelsohn, Bloodline.
Okay, I haven't watched that yet.
And yeah, that's very good. Gosh, I've got so many series and I can't think of which ones, but I do enjoy it at the end of the day to just tune into some good drama, and boy, is there some good drama around.
Oh, there is. We've been binge watching Animal Kingdom, which is.
Oh, that was Ben Mendelsohn, but I watched the whole thing.
Oh, this is the American one, yeah.
I watched the whole American one.
Amazing.
It's outstanding.
Yeah,
it's so gripping. And by the time you get to the end of the episode, you're going next episode.
We did 4 episodes in one night. It's just
I get it.
And
I can do 4 episodes.
So I had 4 seasons to catch up on in a few weeks.
Oh, lucky you. Yeah. Lucky you. And it's exquisite. Yeah. Good acting, some very good acting.
Yeah, it's brilliant. Now your character, Lainie Dobson, the whole storyline was it divided fans. Some fans loved it. Some fans just thought it was so far-fetched. And even when we spoke to Val Lehman, she thought it was just a crazy storyline. What are your thoughts on it?
Well, obviously, I didn't think it was that crazy. Otherwise, I would have read the script before I flew down to Melbourne and said to my agent, "This is too crazy." Obviously at the time I thought, this is interesting.
Yeah.
There's something quirky. So obviously, I didn't think it was too crazy. And then playing it, I think that I tried to embody some truth into it. But maybe it was crazy. Did you think it was crazy? Do you
I
guys
personally
think
thought it was good. I mean,
Uh,
a man going into a prison, I mean, that was, it was far-fetched, but I thought it was a great storyline. I thought you were great.
yeah,
Yeah.
there was sorry.
Stephen O'Neill perhaps sums it up. Ask Marina if there was any hesitation with regards to the storyline. It seems to be even more out of the norm than the other storylines that occurred on Prisoner. I live outside Australia and watched Prisoner many years after it premiered, and I thought the storyline with Marina was really adventuresome for the 1980s.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with that, but wasn't a lot of what was going on in Prisoner very adventurous for the 1980s? I mean, really, it was an edgy show. I mean, look at it. People are still interested in it. And there was something about it, because I had a look at a few episodes knowing I was going to speak to you. So I thought I better jog my memory. And I was thinking, what is it that is so different, but so interesting about looking at Prisoner now? And I love the fact that, first of all, there's a lot of wide angle. So there's a bit of theatrical things going on. So you'd have a whole scene with three people talking, one camera far away. We're not doing close-ups all the time, chopping, changing. There was a purity in that and a calmness for the audience in that. And the other thing I noticed was they have the famous song in the break, that famous song. But other than that, all that's there is the voices of the actor. There's no underlying music. So there's something almost theatrical about it. The actor is raw. There's not a lot of bells and whistles in that studio. It was just something that occurred to me when I watched it. I thought, we were pretty naked there. These days, everything is fixed with a great edit and cuts, but there wasn't a lot of that going on. And there's something, the actor has to be pretty good to keep the attention, because you can't get edited out.
That's true. So your boyfriend on the show, Alan Farmer, who was played by Michael Cormick, who's a well-known singer and theatre performer in musicals here in Australia and the UK. What was it like working with Michael?
I think it was fine. I don't actually, to be honest, I don't really remember. I don't remember how it, I think because Michael was in the early days, he was in the early scenes I had, I think I was a bit overwhelmed to be there amongst all these women. I think I was so overwhelmed that I think I blanked it from my brain. I've blanked those early episodes because I was probably pretty nervous, Other parts, as the series went on, I probably became more relaxed and found my mojo with it. But I think in the beginning, so I really don't remember, sadly, how it was to work with him.
That's okay.
Matt, I think you need to step down to the next one.
Okay, so when you got the part for Lainie, did you know it was just for 13 episodes at the time, or?
I think so.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I'm sure there was a finite thing on it because I would have wanted to know when I was coming home. You know, I was living in a hotel room.
Would you have liked to have stayed on? Or?
I think I do remember being homesick, but that's also why I came back from Paris. I'm just one of those gals that gets homesick.
Yeah.
You know,
Did you have Herbert?
I didn't have Herbert then. No, not when I did Prisoner. There was no Herbert, but I had a mother who I was very close to, and a sister who I was very close to, and yeah, I was never able to leave home for too long, and I wanted to be close, but yeah, just wasn't in my nature.
Oh, so the 13 weeks you're living out of a hotel, so you come.
Yeah.
Ah, okay.
I don't know if I even came back for 13 weeks. I don't recall they flying me up for weekends. No, I don't think I was that important. But I think I was there for 13 weeks. So by the end, yeah, no, I don't think there was any flight home in that time. And I didn't know anyone in Melbourne. It was a bit lonely. I became friends with Kendall. He became a mate of mine.
Kendall Flanagan.
Flanagan, we met there and we became friends. But I didn't have friends in Melbourne then.
Yeah.
We've asked a lot of cast members, about technique and remembering lines and so forth and so on. So we should ask the same thing of you, because it would appear that different actors have different ways of doing that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I remember when I was doing theatre work at NIDA and having some chunky dialogues and bigger parts and 2.5 hours or 2 hours on stage, there was a lot to get in your brain. And I remember my technique when I was at NIDA was to write my dialogue out. So I would literally write my words out, and by writing it out, so that slow thing, it sort of went in a lot quicker, and it was visually there. So it was visually there and then orally there. I do recall for television, I didn't have to do any of that. I don't know whether it was because I was so primed up after NIDA that I was like a racehorse, that I do recall when I got scripts for TV, I read them, each scene I would read 2 or 3 times. Oh, to have a young mind, a young brain. I read it about 2 or 3 times and boom, it was in. 3, 4 maybe. Then I'd have to refresh it before the scene, but 2 days before, the night before, then on set, I'd read it again. But the brain was porous then. These days it's got something overlaying it. It wouldn't be so easy, but it would just go zoom on a young mind.
Brilliant. You had some amazing scenes with Carol Skinner, who played Nola Mackenzie at the time. Do you remember much about those scenes?
I do, because she was the only person on the set, the only actor in the show that I already knew. And it was lovely to arrive and have somebody there that I could relate to from experience. We had done a play in 1982. It was before I went to do Prisoner, The Shifting Heart at Phillip Street Theatre. And we worked together there. A wonderful Australian play by Ken Lawler. And I played Maria, and it was about a family of immigrants, and she was the Australian woman, of course, and I was the Italian girl. And so we did a theatre gig together. So we knew each other quite well already. And I liked her very much. I liked her a lot. And it was good to have her there.
Yeah.
So comforting when you've got somebody that you actually do know in amongst a sea of people that you don't know.
Yeah. And when you arrive as a guest like that, a lot of them are buddied up, and there's a kind of clique, and you've got to find your way. Who's going to be your buddy? Who's going to bite you? Like dogs do at a park. You go in a bit slowly, and then before long they're all playing.
Wow. Just going back on your theatre, you mentioned theatre then. Did you prefer theatre over TV? Did you like doing theatre?
Look, the truth of the matter is, and it's changed now very much, but when I was at NIDA, and I was very young, so also impressionable, so I didn't know very much, so I would just take what they said as gospel, which of course very, very, only perhaps what Jesus says is gospel, not anything else. But they did not talk about television. they just did not discuss television. We had 2 weeks in third year where we went to AFTRS, the Australian Film and Television School, and we had a 2-week thing of doing a gig with camera. They didn't discuss it with us, and I think that was a bit of a mistake, which they've now rectified, and things have changed. So I didn't even think about television. I only thought about the stage because that was my training, you know, that was what they'd imprinted in me. So suddenly coming out of NIDA and doing all this television, you know, it was a little bit dizzying.
Yeah. Wow.
To the young girl who had been fed theatrical ideals, you know, but you roll with it, don't you?
Yeah, definitely.
Being the young girl on Prisoner, did you find that you had any cast members who kind of took you under their wing a little bit and gave you any advice?
I really liked Maggie very much, Maggie Kirkpatrick. I felt that she would mother if she needed to, and you know, and who else? And Carol and Kendall took me under his wing. That's about it, really. Yeah.
Would have been daunting. Was it daunting?
It was.
Yeah.
It really, really was. It was very daunting. But you know, you put the work before before yourself. And I think I just tried to concentrate on what's going down with Lainie Dobson. And at the end of the day, that saves you because there's a purpose. There's a purpose beyond you. But sometimes, you know, when you're working with people and you're sensitive, you feel things, and it's tricky, you know, it's tricky. You have to fortify yourself and not lose focus. So that's where, if you concentrate on the bigger picture, you'll survive it much better.
Yeah, yeah.
Sorry, Matt, it's interesting that we've had other cast members say that they were apprehensive or that they felt, you know, petrified sometimes coming into a show was solid in ratings, and that its cast and crew had sort of coalesced, and they felt very apprehensive. Whereas from another point of view, when we first got together with the cast that we didn't know, mostly, we were the ones that were apprehensive, you know, as well.
Yeah, well, you have to get to know each new body that comes in, and a trust has to develop, and that develops over time. I think by the end of it, there was a lot of trust, but it's only natural to be a bit wary, you know, sniff each other out. But I think all was well. That ended well. I think it all ended well in my memory.
Yeah.
I would need to talk to Carol and Maggie to remind me, because they were that bit older than me and their memories may be clearer, but I was daunted. I was daunted. So my memories are not as clear as I'd like them to be.
Yeah. A big part of your character was the tattoos, which is also a lot of the fans talk about. And Cherie Dawn, one of the fans, also wanted to ask, how long did it take the makeup department to do the tattoos? Because your character was quite protective of them. And did you do any research about tattoos?
Well, first of all, it did take a long time. I do remember it took a long time. And I also remember, because I've actually got a photo of it, when we were doing a rehearsal of my tattoos, they had put a little heart on my cheek here, a little heart with an arrow through it, very tiny, just on the cheek. And they later decided to take that out, which was probably a good idea because, you know, the tattoos weren't always featured. They were featured in the scenes that I'm talking about it and when they were on my chest. But if they had to have it here all the time, it would have been a lot more work for the makeup department. But yeah, it took a long time. Did I do any research? I'm ashamed to say I didn't.
Did they actually transfers or did they actually hand paint them on?
Look, if they were transfers, it wouldn't have taken long, right? So they couldn't have been transfers because I remember sitting in the makeup chair for a long time. So I can't imagine they would hand paint them on. There must have been some like print and then color, but it did take, today you can get a transfer, it's got the color and everything else. Maybe there was a print but it was a process.
Yeah. Long day.
You had some scenes with Sheila, Florence.
Yes.
The cast and the crew we've interviewed on Talking Prisoner say much the same thing, but do you have any memories of working with Sheila?
I do, because we also did a Paul Cox film about 7 years later in 1991, where she had the lead role in A Woman's Tale, directed by Paul and with Gosia Dobrowolska. And I had one little scene as a prostitute, a junkie prostitute, where I go and talk to Sheila and another elderly woman. And it was so lovely to see her again 7 years later. And yeah, I have very warm memories of Sheila. And even the scenes we shared, she was so passionate, you know, such a warm passion which she embodied. And of course, when I think of Sheila, I think of cigarettes. But we were all smoking then, you know, we all smoked a lot, but she smoked a lot.
Mm.
I probably kept up with her actually back then.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You didn't keep up with her in the stout department, did you?
No, but I probably put whiskey instead of stout. Stout was never my drink, but I would have kept up with her with the liquor back in those days. Yeah, sadly, foolishly, regretfully.
When we, in episode 11 of Talking Prisoner, we spoke with Val Lehman, and she mentioned about her storyline where she went to Sydney. And that was actually due to, she thought that this storyline with Lainie and Ellen was a bit far-fetched and she didn't want to be on, like, in the studios. Not against you or Michael or anything like that. It was just the storyline she didn't agree with. And then she came back from Sydney, obviously. And so you did get to work with Val. What was it like working with Val? You had a few.
I think she was a bit scary. I think so. She reigned there. You know, this was her turf, you know, and it was palpably her turf. And when you're coming in, you're careful of the top dog, you know. I do recall her being powerful, and I was a little intimidated by her. Yeah. But she was a good actress.
Yeah. What
a good actress. I never got to know her, sadly, you know. I was very, very shy too, you know. Yeah. If you're not so shy, you make an effort and you're more, but I was particularly shy then. And so I don't think we really got to know each other.
Yeah, now Val's I was even nervous before the interview with Val. I'm really nervous, but no, she's lovely.
Yeah, she's lovely.
She's so lovely. Really.
She really did some good work in that show, didn't she? Great timing, believable, very, very fine actress.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Did Prisoner open any or close any doors for you after you appeared on
I'm sure it opened doors in the land of TV. I'm sure, and film, I'm sure it did. Yeah, because in those first, well, I finished NIDA in 81. In the first 5 to 6 years when I came out of NIDA, I was pretty much working all the time. You know, with working all the time, that means if you're working 4 or 5 months of the year, that's working all the time as an actor, because you need downtime, you need to. So, but I was pretty busy, and I'm sure Prisoner opened up a few doors, because then came things like Special Squad, where I played the lead in that 1 hour, and Flying Doctors, you know, the intensive roles for the 1 hour episodes, and the film Indecent Obsession. So there was a succession of work after all that, before I kind of imploded a little bit, because I think I was moving too fast, you know, too fast, and too fast and too young, and I lost direction. I lost my way. I went into a prickly forest.
Yeah.
But not with painting, but with being a performer.
Wow. Season 5, episode 28, which was written by Wendy Jackson, directed by Steve Mann. The cameramen were Wayne Lavender, Barry Pullen, and Ken Mulholland. So this is your first episode where we see you and Ellen being inducted on the famous White Line of Wentworth with Meg Morris. What was that first scene like to film? Like, what was running through your mind?
Well, look, you know, that's when you can use real life feelings to help the role, because, you know, Lainie there with her boyfriend, girlfriend, whatever. We were nervous as characters, and I was petrified as Marina trying to make my first entrance. So I used all of that. So it was petrifying.
Would have been. There's also a scene I wanted to talk to you about, which was in the shower block, and Ellen had to get into the shower, but they didn't want anyone to see him obviously disrobed. So what you did was just take your dressing gown off, out of the shower, and you know your body was half exposed. How did you feel about shooting a scene like that? Obviously, you've done modeling and things like that. So
well, this is the thing, you know. And then when I did Special Squad, I played a bikie girl who wasn't wearing a bra, and it was completely see-through. And, you know, I really regret that. But, you know, yeah, I'll do it. Sure, no problem. And, you know, in retrospect, I wouldn't do that again. But my experience as a life model meant disrobing was not an issue. You know, my body was an instrument. And so I didn't think, you know, again, I forgot to think it through. And how much was shown in that shower scene?
it was for a few split. I went back and rewatched episodes, and it was probably for maybe a couple of seconds from the side. You didn't see it.
Oh, but no, my breast wasn't exposed. My breasts weren't exposed.
Front on, no, but just
not front on. Oh, well, that's okay. That's fine. But, you know, flash forward 3 years ahead, and I do many scenes where it's practically full frontal naked for this show Special Squad, where I played a bikie girl in a show called Susie's War, and I was Susie. And I look at it, or I've looked at it since, and I've just buried my head in horror. You know, no, I shouldn't have done it. But yeah, taking my clothes off wasn't a thing, but it is a thing.
Yeah.
It's a big thing.
Yeah, definitely. Any memories or stories you can share with the fans about your time on Prisoner? Something that stands out, apart from being petrified on your first day?
Petrified on the first day, warming up as time went on, developing a wonderful friendship with Kendall Flanagan, who I continued to be friends with after the show. He'd come to Sydney and we'd meet up, and I'd see him in Melbourne as well. And of course, you know, all the Carol and Maggie specific Stories. I'm so sorry. I can't. I haven't got any.
It's a long time ago.
It was a long time ago, but it was intense. Let's put it that way. It was an intense experience. Sorry?
About your art now and what you're doing now. And I know that you work still life, you painted still life, portraits, landscapes. You do the whole.
Yeah, I do.
One thing I didn't ask you was, do you do anything that's a bit way out, a bit strange, you know?
I did. For a short time, I did abstraction. I did funny little kind of weird, almost, let me think of the artist's name, French artist, they're like masks, abstracted doodle masks. Paul Klee touches upon it in a way. So I went for maybe a year and a half so I've been painting for more than 30 years now. For about a year and a half to 2 years, I thought, I'll be an abstract painter. And I got into it, and then I didn't know where to go with it. I admire abstraction, but I found I painted myself into a corner, and I didn't know how to continue. I lost the energy of that. So
yeah,
that's about as weird as I've ever gone.
Yes, I've wanted to do experimentation with perspective, just perspective.
Mm-hmm.
But I never have gotten around to it because I'm so fascinated with portraiture.
Absolutely. And look, trying to get the eyeball in the right place in connection to the nostril, I mean, that can be a lifetime pursuit. You'll never get bored with that. Yeah, it's an endless challenge. Every picture is a challenge.
But it's the fascination of the face.
For you, yeah.
Yeah. It's just men, women, not many children. I haven't painted much in the way of children, but men and women just have, at any age, just have fantastic faces, and
yes.
There's so much there.
Yeah, there's a lot of emotion in the human face. I recently had a show called Dogs and Saints, and in this exhibition, I painted many dogs, and I really enjoyed doing dog portraiture. I loved it. As much on a different level to doing the human face, but equally fascinating. The spirit, to get the spirit of the human is very hard. I mean, at the end of the day, you kind of need to get the eyeball balanced to where the nostril is to a certain degree. But at the end of the day, it's about getting the spirit of that person. And you can do that with a smear, like Francis Bacon. He'll paint somebody and smear the whole thing, and there it is. So it doesn't necessarily have to be strict like that.
Yeah.
Do you work every day?
I try to. Yeah, I try to. I don't have a routine as such because I have other things in my life that I do and tend to. But I try to do something. I focus on something at least every day. Some days I may do 4 or 5 hours, and then the next day 1 hour. You know, I try to keep it in a flow, in a way.
It's a part of a discipline.
Definitely. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Because you know that one can get painter's block, and the best way out of painter's block is to paint.
Yeah.
That's the only way out of painter's block, is to paint.
Yes, yes.
I know we've taken up some of your time, but would you mind, can we just go through some fan questions? There are some fans who are hoping to ask some questions. Richard Ken's the first one.
Yes, this is from Andrew Birch. Now, I'm not sure where he comes from, but he asks, what was your favourite scene or storyline? And he says that the scene that sticks in his mind the most was when you were on a trip and drawing a face in the mirror with toothpaste, looking completely manic, and Ferguson walks into your cell. And the other one, using the caustic soda to remove your tattoos and collapsing on the floor. You know.
I think those two scenes are definitely the highlight of Lainie's 13 episodes. Those are the most intense, the most demanding for an actor to get a level of truth. I was thinking about that LSD scene, and I had experienced LSD before. Just once. It was horrible. I hated it. But, you know, it was the 80s. You had to do these things. I was an actor. I needed to do it. Little did I know I would draw upon it 2 years later. But I had one trip, never again. So I had that experience, and there was perhaps quite a bit of authenticity in that performance that otherwise I wouldn't have been able to do, because I wouldn't have known what happens in a trip.
Yeah.
So yeah, that trip was pretty intense, and putting my arm in caustic soda, I remember that was very challenging to psych up to experience pain like that, physical pain that I had, touch wood, and had not yet, I don't know about. So that had to be pure imagination, which requires a lot of focus.
Yeah. Janice Robertson, who's a massive fan of Prisoner, she said you have a very lovely name to start with, and she did ask about what it was like working with Maggie, which we've touched on. She did ask, are you in contact with anyone from the show still?
I have been in contact over the years with Carol Skinner. She came to not my last exhibition, but the exhibition before that. I think I've seen Maggie somewhere out and about, but no, not as such. Yeah. Apart from Kendall for the few years, unfortunately he died young, but Kendall I was in touch with, but none of the other actors, no. But I love Carol Skinner very much. Yeah, I adore her.
Yeah.
David Andrews asks, do you watch Wentworth, the television series?
I don't have Foxtel. I don't. You need Foxtel to watch that, right? Yeah, I think it's on Fox. It's on Foxtel. I don't. I have Netflix, and that's it. So I don't. Yeah, I know a little bit about Wentworth, and I think I've seen a couple of episodes, and it's doing very well, I believe, right?
Yeah, won lots of awards, and yeah, in its last season, which it's 8th season at the moment.
Wow. Well, that's successful, isn't it?
Yeah.
That's
it's actually
great.
one of Foxtel's highest rating shows. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Isn't that amazing? Is it as good as Prisoner?
No.
Because
the production is great. No, sorry, the production is fantastic. The acting's great. Everything's great. It's not the original Prisoner. Yeah.
Well, the thing about, I think we're back to that thing that what I liked when I was looking at some of the things before knowing I was coming to talk to you. I loved the fact that there were no bells and whistles.
Yeah.
You know, and the lack of sophistication, if you will, with that excess amount of money that you can pour into a show. The fact that it didn't have that excessive time, it didn't have that excessive money, is why it's so refreshing.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's no music to underline that we're now meant to be scared. The actors have to make us feel that way. I think it's quite wonderful. I think maybe they should do more of that, where they just have no bells and whistles, and have the actor be raw, more raw.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Wentworth's great. I mean, I watch it myself. It's a great show, but it's just when you're a Prisoner fan, it's two different shows. Yeah.
Sure.
Ken, over to Andrew Barton.
You were, yeah, okay. Later, Elizabeth Drysdale in Grundy's Taurus, you were later Elizabeth Drysdale in Grundy's Taurus Rising, one of the ill-fated soaps for the Nine Network. This is from Andrew Barton, by the way, and which was scheduled against Prisoner, apparently. What was it like working on Taurus Rising?
Taurus Rising was before Prisoner. It was in 1982. It came out in 1983. I think. Am I getting my dates mixed up? I did print out. Yeah, no, Taurus Rising, I think, was before Prisoner. And that's why I got into Prisoner. That's how I recall it. Look, apparently at the time, it was touted to be the next big show. And Channel 9 put a lot of money into it. Too much money into it. There we go. Too many bells and whistles, and the audience don't buy it. It was overdone, and also they were resting on the concept, I think a lot on the concept of Dallas and Dynasty, which the Australian audiences, we didn't, at that time, it just seemed a little bit like, who are these people? Who are these hoi polloi? You know, actually hoi polloi, no, you know, these fancy people who the Australian audience couldn't really relate to it.
Yeah.
I think that's why it died. Do you remember it, Ken? Did you see it?
No, I was too busy.
No, you were too busy working. Of course. Yeah, it was sad because it was supposed to be, you know, it was, you know, beautiful glossy show.
A bit like
it started on. Sorry.
Was it a bit like Return to Eden?
I never saw Return to Eden. I'm not sure. I never saw it. But I do remember this, that it's, you know, it had this huge publicity thing behind it, and it was supposed to, you know, it started at, you know, prime time, Channel 9, 8 o'clock, you know, this huge fanfare of Taurus Rising. And then I think after about 3 shows, it went on to 10 o'clock at night.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, but they continued to play it, but it was like when everybody went to bed. You know, the show wasn't doing too well if they bumped it up to 10 p.m.
Sorry, keep freezing for a minute there.
I think you're frozen on me.
Yeah, just
Have I frozen? I'm here.
No, you're back now. Okay, stop for a minute.
Okay.
This is not a question, but it's from Kevin Taylor. He said you were his first prisoner crush back in the 90s.
How sweet. How lovely. Thank you, Kevin. That's sweet of you to say so.
Kevin McConaughey also says, did you audition for any other parts in Prisoner apart from?
No. I never came back to Prisoner after that time.
Did you want to?
I think so. Yeah. Yeah. With a little more maturity under my belt, you know, already having experienced it, I would have come back with a whole different personality behind me. And yeah, I would.
Davey Johnson said, greetings from Hastings in the UK. Wow, what a treat for us fans. So thank you. Do you still get recognised and stopped in the street by Lainie fans who remember you for your role in Prisoner in today's world?
Oh, that's a sweet question, because we're talking, you know, nearly 40 years ago. I hardly look like Lainie these days. So no, people don't go, there's Lainie Dobson. But I do sometimes, I know people look at me and they think they know me. And I don't know which show it's from, but they don't know where they know me from, because it's a long time ago. But I know that people go, and often they'll go, I've met you before. And I know I've never met them, but they've watched me as an actor at some point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
maybe they know you as an artist.
Well, the thing about being an artist is that it's not the artist that's really known, it's the work. But as an actor, your work and your face is all intermeshed. But as a painter, you can hide because the work is in front of your physicality.
John Walters wanted to ask you about the scene, the wonderful scene, he says, with Lizzie being the fortune teller.
Oh yes, 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 yes. That was fun. I mean, that had a lovely comic element, didn't it? It was funny.
Yeah.
That could have gone on a little longer, I think. There could have been more going on in that scene. It was just so sweet in that tent, and yeah, it would have been fun to have extended the comic line of that. It began, but then the scene finished.
Ooh.
There was another fan question posted, but it's actually lost for some reason. It disappeared off the Facebook page. So I do apologize to the fan that did ask it. But he wanted to ask about your time on Sons and Daughters. You appeared on Sons and Daughters for, I think, 8 episodes. Yeah.
The thing I really remember about that, because how could you forget? Abigail was in it with me. Yep. We had some scenes. I had scenes with Abigail. And we were both playing like we were enemies. I can't remember the storyline, but I know we were enemies. And there's a scene where she grabs a cake and throws it in my face.
Ah, that's what he was. Yes, that's what he was talking.
Yeah, that I remember that we can't forget that experience. I've never had a cake thrown in my face before or since, and I remember, because that's a one take. You're not going to do that twice. And I remember just wanting to laugh, and it wasn't in the character to laugh. The character had to be furious, But so I had to combine this desire to laugh, but turn it into that she was angry. It was rather difficult. It was hilarious. Jesus, a cake thrown in your face. That's full on.
Was it a nice cake? Something?
I'm sure it was like a sponge cake. It was white and spongy and soft and lots of icing and revolting.
We've come to Leslie Hall's question, which she wanted to ask you about you working with Sheila, and especially also, apart from Prisoner, but also on A Woman's Tale. Was that a film that was Sheila's last film? Was that her last film?
It was her last film.
And it won an award.
Yeah, it went to Cannes Film Festival. And to tie back into my story, when I was in France for those 3-4 months, I knew that A Woman's Tale was screening at the Cannes Film Festival. So I caught a train down to Cannes, and I saw the film at the Cannes Film Festival. Isn't that lovely? Yeah.
Full circle.
That was pretty special. I remember being kind of, that was an interesting experience.
Wow.
Seeing yourself at the Cannes Film Festival. It didn't do that well, it wasn't a huge commercial success, sadly. An art house film in the way Paul Cox does. So he's an artist,
yes,
not a blockbuster filmmaker.
I believe he'd used Sheila a couple of times in different films, and I think he also made a film called Man of Flowers with Norman Kay.
That's right. Yeah, and he used Wendy Hughes a lot, and he was a kind of film director that actors like, because it's very dreamy, and I was really very impressed with Paul, because he was an artist and you could feel that, and he had a big dream about the films he was making, and you were just part of that dream. So it was something much bigger than yourself as a commodity, which can sometimes happen in the television world. You can become a commodity, and then they focus on you as a personality, which, if you don't want to be a personality, can get you into trouble if you're not careful. But Paul, you're serving Paul and the idea of the film, and you're an instrument, like a color in a palette, if you will. And there's something very beautiful and poetic about that. And sometimes being a television actress and becoming a commodity and doing publicity, if you're shy and if you don't necessarily want that focus, it can confuse you, which is what happened to me. I got confused and then I went to hide.
Yeah.
And then I hid inside making pictures.
Wow. Well, that's a wrap. Thank you so much for coming on. The fans will absolutely love to watch this and hear about your life and your time on Prisoner. Whereabouts is all your art that fans can go and look at? Is it on your website that they can purchase?
Yes, I have a website. I think it's just www.marinafinlay.com. And yeah, there's quite a bit of my work up there.
Fantastic. Well,
is the sketch of Herbert there?
No, there isn't, but it's here. Do you want to see it? Have a look. Here it is, because it's it's in pride of place here. No. Oh, can you see that?
Yeah. Wow.
It's hard to see, but and it doesn't really do him justice. But yeah, I have lots of sketches of Herbert.
No, that's an amazing one.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Thank
Marina.
you. Thank
you, Ken.
Yeah.
It's been lovely to talk to you. Very, very lovely. Very lovely to go back in time.
And we'll put a link
like
up
a time
to the website as well on our website.
Okay, thanks, Matt.
marinafinlay.com. No AU, just .com.
I think so. www.
We'll
I think
check.
you got to have that.
Yeah.
Anyway, if you type my name in Google, it's there.
Yeah.
My website's there.
Check that out. Thanks so much. It's been amazing.
Thank you. Lovely to see you again, Ken. We worked together so long ago. And keep up the painting activity. Shall do. Do one of your dog.
I'm not very good at doing fur.
No, it's tricky. It's tricky. I particularly prefer fur to skin. So there we are. You prefer skin, I prefer fur.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you, Marina.
Thank you. Thank you. Lovely to talk.
You too.
Bye.